It is clear that the Trump foreign policy is going to be very different from the Joe Biden foreign policy. Yesterday, Trump issued an amazing statement with regard to the hostages currently being held by Hamas. Here was the statement, quote, "Everybody is talking about the hostages who are being held so violently, inhumanely, and against the will of the entire world in the Middle East. But it's all talk and no action. Please let this truth serve to represent that if the hostages are not released prior to January 20th, 2025, the date that I proudly assume office as President of the United States, there will be all hell to pay," that's all caps, "in the Middle East, and for those in charge who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity. Those responsible will be hit harder than anyone has been hit in the long and storied history of the United States of America. Release the hostages now." And now, just imagine if Joe Biden had taken that position from the very beginning of this war. This war would have been over 6 months ago. Okay, but Donald Trump is doing that. So what exactly is that going to look like for President Trump? Well, there are a wide variety of things that President Trump could do. So, for example, he could put heavy pressure on both Qatar and Turkey. Qatar has serious connections with Hamas. That is why the Hamas leadership was, until very recently, staying in Qatar. Qatar plays all sides of every field. They pour money into American universities. They pour money into soccer teams. They host the Olympics, right? They host the World Cup. They do all of these things in order to shield themselves from criticism, but they effectively are an Iranian cat's paw. The United States could easily say that we are going to remove our airbase from Qatar if Qatar doesn't pressure Hamas to release the hostages. The United States could also take measures against Turkey, the government of Turkey, which is an Islamist government currently supporting Sunni ISIS members in Syria, among others, and currently playing host to wounded Hamas members and Hamas leadership. We could simply say to them, listen, whatever membership in NATO you have is going to be immediately revoked unless you guys get on board, expel Hamas, and force Hamas to release the hostages. That could certainly be something. In terms of on-the-ground action, let's say that there is no incentive structure from outside the Gaza Strip that could actually be brought to bear on members of Hamas inside the Gaza Strip. There's still things that the United States could do. Number one, the United States could theoretically relieve pressure on the Israelis to perform humanitarian aid functions that Hamas is stealing. One of the things that Hamas has been doing, one of the things keeping Hamas alive, is the massive amounts of humanitarian aid that are being shipped into the Gaza Strip and that are subsequently being stolen by Hamas. Now, Hamas doesn't care if its own people starve. Hamas does not care if Palestinians die en masse. In fact, that was the entire purpose of the war. Their goal was to kill enough Israelis to prompt a serious military response in the hopes that Israel would end up mass killing civilians so that Hamas could claim that it was the victim and then get the world on board for actions against Israel. That was their pretty open goal. So they don't care if Hamas affiliated civilians or non-affiliated civilians die in the Gaza Strip. However, it is true that Hamas has been making its money by stealing humanitarian aid at point of gun and then reselling it to people in the Gaza Strip or seizing the aid and using it for themselves. If the United States were to say, listen, no more humanitarian aid until the hostages are given up, at the very least, Hamas would be deprived of its lifeline and its monetary supply. And then there's a proposal that's been put forward by Eugene Kontorovich, who is a legal scholar from Israel. This is a proposal that I think would probably be the most successful proposal. This is a proposal that suggests that the thing that Hamas and terrorists in the Palestinian Authority and the rest care about most is grabbing more and more and more territory. If, however, that were to reverse, if holding the hostages were to result in more territory being annexed by Israel with the permission and acquiescence of the United States, then that would actually reverse the polarity. See, the thing is that if you're going to exert pressure on Hamas, you have to find something they care about. They don't care about dead civilians. They don't seem to care about money very much, obviously, because the Israeli government has been offering a reward of $5 million for any person who frees a hostage and instant transport out of the Gaza Strip. But Kontorovich points out that one of the things that the United States could do, he says, for every day Hamas does not give up the hostages, America could recognize 100 square dunam of Gaza as a permanent Israeli buffer zone. For every murdered hostage, 1,000 square dunam, and then do it. The war would be over in days. A dunam is approximately a quarter of an acre. So basically, his suggestion is that for every single day that Hamas doesn't give up the hostages, America recognizes that 25 square acres of Gaza disappear. They become part of a buffer zone in which nobody lives in the Gaza Strip, and the territory just keeps shrinking. So Hamas would have achieved the reverse of its supposed goals in this war, which was to extirpate the state of Israel. Instead, they would be extirpating their own territory. This is easily the best suggestion by Kontorovich. The bottom line is that the entire orientation of the Trump administration is very different from the Biden administration when it comes to this conflict. The Biden administration keeps trying to play halvesies with terrorists over and over and over. In fact, It was the Biden administration playing halvesies with terrorists that led to the breakdown of the ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel yesterday. So basically, that ceasefire, which was signed just about a week ago, that ceasefire gave Israel the ability to continue to do anti-terror operations if Hezbollah were to ship weaponry or personnel south of the Litani River in Lebanon. And the Biden administration has been yelling at Israel for enforcing that. So basically, the Biden administration position is that actually Hezbollah can willy-nilly violate the ceasefire by shipping both personnel and material south of Litani with the acquiescence or in spite of any resistance by the Lebanese armed forces, and that Israel could do nothing. Well, the minute that the American government said that publicly, that now gave Hezbollah every ability to do exactly what it wanted to do and up the ante again and violate the ceasefire, which is why yesterday Hezbollah fired at Israeli-controlled territory for the first time since the ceasefire was reached last week, prompting Israel to launch a wave of airstrikes in Lebanon as each side blamed the other for violating the tenuous truce. The Israeli military said 2 Hezbollah projectiles fell in open areas without causing casualties. The Lebanese armed group said its launches had been prompted by, quote, repeated violations of the agreement by the Israeli enemy, describing it as, quote, an initial defensive response that serves as a warning. Now, again, the reason that they are doing that is because Hezbollah terrorists have been crossing the Litani, and they've been shipping in material, and they've been moving up on the Lebanese border once again. The only reason they think they can get away with that is because Joe Biden is a fool and a simpleton, and so are the rest of the members of his foreign policy administration. They are jokes, and because they are jokes, Hezbollah is treating them as jokes. That is going to end the minute that Donald Trump enters office. In fact, if Hamas were to cut a deal today, one of the things that would be very clear is that they are cutting a deal because they know that they better cut a deal now with Joe Biden, sop that he is, in office, rather than Donald Trump, because they're going to get a much worse deal out of President Trump than they're going to get out of the pathetic and weak-spined Biden administration. Every so often, the media, when their agenda is exposed, in their own defense, they have to go after Democrats. So you'll remember they did this after Joe Biden was proved senile, live on stage in a debate with Donald Trump. They then had to pretend that they were shocked that any of this was happening. Well, the media knew full well that Joe Biden is corrupt. They've known for years that Joe Biden is corrupt, but they have to pretend that they are shocked by Joe Biden's corruption, which means that you get these sort of occasional glimpses, like stars emerging from a cloudy sky, of honesty. So yesterday, CNN's Breonna Keller made Democrat of New York Daniel Goldman watch video of himself saying that Joe Biden would not pardon Hunter.
You went out on a limb backing up Biden when he said that there would not be a pardon. In July of 2023, just after that plea deal fell through, this is what you said. I want to watch.
Do you think a pardon for his son would be a mistake?
Yes, and I don't think there's any chance that President Biden is going to do that, unlike his predecessor, who pardoned all of his friends and anyone who had any access to him. And I think you see that in this case, where he kept on, and Merrick Garland kept on, a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney to investigate the president's son. If there is not an indication of the independence of the Department of Justice beyond that, I don't know what we could look for.
What does that feel like, watching yourself back then, reassuring people that Biden was not going to issue a pardon for his son?
Yeah, and I think that if that plea agreement and that plea deal had gone through, there would be no pardon. That was a satisfactory outcome.
It had already fallen through.
That only was. Sorry?
When you reacted, this was when the deal had fallen through. And I hear what you're saying about the Kash Patel appointment, but, you took him at his word. So what does that feel like, knowing that he's gone back on it?
Well, as I said, I'm disappointed that after the plea fell through and it became clear about why it did, including Republican congressional intervention in this case, which made this case very unique and very different from any other case. I think that we all, perhaps I should have as well, recognized that this is not the normal prosecution. I said many times that if Hunter Biden were not Hunter Biden, he would never be charged with these crimes. And when you start to see what Donald Trump is planning to do with his Department of Justice and with his FBI, and the degree to which Hunter Biden has already been shamelessly attacked as a private citizen by Republicans, I certainly understand why the president felt like this miscarriage of justice should not carry forward and that he should not be at risk of retributive prosecution.
Okay, enough of this guy. I mean, man, he's just going to keep on humping that basketball over there. Is Dan Goldman. It's amazing. This guy was involved in both impeachment efforts of Donald Trump. But don't worry, the only politicization that happened is with regard to Hunter Biden. Are you tired of the lies and the twist of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.